So, the first topic that we are going to discuss is Paper 1, Political Theory, Unit 1, Definition and Meaning of Political Science. So, what we basically mean by political science, what is its meaning, how do we define it, and what all is covered under political science, that is what we are going to discuss. So first we start by the introduction. So when we start about studying about political science, first we need to understand the terms which are there in the word political science. So political science basically has two terms. One is political, the other is science. So political basically is related to politics, and the term politics is derived from the word polis, which means a Greek city state. So polis is a Greek term which was used for a small city state which was there in the ancient Greek times, which was situated near a harbor and which looked like modern cities. That is why the term was used as a city state. It was not as big as a country, but it was a small unit like cities in modern times, and thus was called a city state. So, first thing that we need to understand is that when we use the word state in political science with a capital S, then it denotes a country in modern sense. The we have India, so we call India as a state. So when we write state with capital S, then it denotes the country, not the other political units which are there inside the country as a system, as a whole one political unit. Okay, so this is what politics means. So politics is something related to a city state or a state. Now we come to the second term, which is science. What is science? Science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through the methods of observation, evidence, and experiment. So basically, what we do in sciences, we basically collect facts and data and then do experimentation and prove that facts and data to study certain concepts, to study certain structure and behavior of something which is there in front of us. So that is what is science is. So political science basically comprises of these two terms, political and science. So when we trace the origin of political science, we trace the origin of the political thought, which we trace to the Greek ancient times, where the philosophers like sophists, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle gave their theories. So basically, Aristotle is regarded as the father of political science, and he was the first person who used the term politics by naming his book with the same title, which is Politics, and he called political science as a master science. The next, since we discussed Aristotle, so now we come to the traditional meaning of political science, that what political science meant in the traditional view. Because since there has been a great time lapse from the ancient Greek time to the present ages, so obviously the meaning and the definition of political science has changed over time. So, what is the traditional meaning of this political science is now what we are going to discuss. So, what Aristotle said that man by nature is a political animal, and he who by nature and not by mere accident is without state is either above humanity or below it. So, basically, by this definition, Aristotle is trying to underline the importance of state in the individual's life. Why is a state important? So he says that man from the beginning, from his birth, he always desires to live in an association. And state is the best form of association, it is the highest form of association. So man by nature, by the nature of the individual man, he desires to live in a state. And if a certain individual does not wants to live in a state, that means either he is basically a god or a beast, because both of them, either we talk about gods or we talk about the beasts, yeah, the animal kingdom, they do not have any order, and the you can say the civil society that we are living in, the civilization that we are living in. So what makes human beings different from these two is basically that we live in an ordered society which is governed by certain laws and rules and regulations. So that is why what Aristotle is saying, that by nature man was destined to be in a state. Man was always there to live in a state. He cannot live without it. So it is evident that the state needs to be an organized organization which is necessary to fulfill the different needs and demands of the people and to work for its development. So the aim of the state is basically to fulfill the different needs and demands of the individual and to help in the development of that individual. So, to achieve this end, what the state needs? The state needs an instrument, a mechanism which is needed to run the state to fulfill these needs and desires. So, that is where the government comes. So government becomes an institutional mechanism which is there to achieve the end of the state. So, together, the state and government work for the desires, for the needs of the individual so that he leads a self sufficient and progressive life. So, now what political science means? Basically, political science means that it is the study of state and government, state as a whole, and the instrument which the state uses to fulfill the needs, that is the government, and to study the relationship between the both and the different impact and influence of each other upon the life of the individual. That is what political science in the traditional meaning used to exercise its role. That is how political science worked. That is how political science meant. What was political science in the traditional sense? So, according to this traditional view, there are certain definitions which have been given by certain different philosophers, certain political thinkers, which are as follows. Dr. Garner called political science as beginning and ending with the state. So, political science basically begins and ends with the state. The other political thinker, who was a French political thinker, Paul Janet, he calls political science as the part of social science which treats of the foundations of the state and the principles of government. According to Leacock, political science deals with the government. So these were the different definitions which were put forward by different political thinkers who also were of the view that this political science has this traditional meaning of political science, that it deals with state and government. So every definition you see that it is either saying about a state and concerning itself to the government. So this was the traditional view of political science. Now, when we come to the modern view, obviously over the time period, there have been certain changes in the meaning and development of political science. So, in recent times, obviously, after certain revolutions in different spheres of the world, now we have different political thought from each part of the world. So, according to this, American political thought gave rise to basically new concepts and new political theories. So, what was the difference in these political theories and political concept from the earlier political concepts? That is what we are going to discuss. So, what we saw in the traditional view of political science, the emphasis was on state, government, institutions, and their legal norms. Basically, the you can say the legal aspect of the state, the legal aspect of the government, that was what we were concerned with in the traditional meaning of political science. But today, that thing, that concept, that view has changed. Why? Because today, the modern theorists have substituted the term political system in place of the state. Now, why they use the term political system? Because political system has a wider ambit, it has a wider scope. It basically not only covers the state and government, but other different institutions, other different associations which are existent within the state, and they impact and influence the working of the state as well as government. These institutions basically are either trade unions, political parties, or different civil society groups and individuals in themselves who exercise a great influence upon the state as well as the government. So these all association institutions interact with each other. They have different processes and they influence basically the state as well as the working of the government. Also, this system, which is the state, the political system, interacts with other systems like the subsystems of economic system, the legal system, and cultural system. These all impact and influence each other simultaneously. So today we see and we witness that there has been a shift to not only study the state and government but to also study the various processes, the influences which emerge out of the social environment in of today's time in which we live. Now we see that a certain change in political behavior, a certain change in the working of the political parties or trade unions or their demands and their wishes also change and shape the politics of a country. So today what we witness is that every institution, every association which is there in today's social environment also impacts this political social system. So today the meaning and the definition of political science has changed. So, according to this modern view, what we see in the difference the difference in the definition of political science is that today political science is called as the study of the act of human and social control. This definition has been given by Caitlin, and he says that the study of the act of human and social control is termed as political science. So, humans also exercise control in of the state and the government, and socially also the different institutions have a control over the state and government. So today political science also studies that. Also, according to David Easton, he says that politics is the authoritative allocation of values. So basically today we also include in political science the value aspect which is there in the system. Also, according to Harold Laswell, he says that politics is the study of influence and the influential. So, the people who are there influencing the working of the government, working of the state, they are also to be studied and their influences too. So, today we talk about everything and every aspect which impacts, influences, or changes and shapes the working of both the political state and the government. So, today the ambit of political science has increased many-fold. Today, we include a lot of things in political science. So, a question must be arising in your minds that whether to use the term politics or political science. Many a times, both the terms are used interchangeably. Many scholars also use the term interchangeably, writing in place of political science politics, or in place of politics writing it as political science. But what are really politics and political science, whether they are similar or whether they are different, is not what we are going to discuss. So there are some scholars who use politics over political science. That means they use the term politics in place of political science. So these scholars are basically Paul, Janet, Sidgwick, Sir Pollock, who say that politics has covers political science in itself. So they basically divide politics into two parts, which is theoretical politics, where the discussion is upon the origin, nature, and development of the state and the principles of political science. That means it discusses the theory of state, the theory of government, legislation, state in perspective of international relations. All these are covered in theoretical aspect, that is theoretical politics. The other part is of applied politics, which studies the actual working of the government. That means the state in action, how the state works, how does it functions, what are the different functions it performs, how is it being run. So that covers state, government, laws and legislation, diplomacy, conferences, etc. So basically, the division has been one of the theoretical side and the other of the applied side. But when we come to political science, we see that it is the much wider aspect, it is a much wider term and is used by most of the scholars. How does it covers both the theoretical and applied politics is that we what we see in this chart. Basically, political science has two aspects, normative and positive. In the normative aspect, we include every political philosophy which has been from the ancient time to present given by different political thinkers. And also along with that we include the ideas which are based upon that political philosophy, the ideologies which have been inspired from these political thinkers, from these political theories of these political thinkers. The under the other aspect, we have the positive side, where we include the political institutions. That means the different institutions which are there existing within the state as well as outside the state. So these institutions are sometimes legal, the legal being the state, the legal entity within a political system being the state, which also covers constitution and public administration. That means we have both the constitution as well as public administration. The second political institution is basically national and international relations. So, state functioning as a unit in international relations, state in relation to other different political units which are there, the different states which are there, and also to different other international actors like the UN, like the IMF, like the World Bank. So, that also are to be covered under political science. Also, it includes certain extra legal entities which we do not covered earlier under the ambit of political science, which were not studied earlier under political science but are now included. These are political parties, your press, media, trade unions, etc., which also have a role in the functioning and working of the government. So political science in a way has a much wider scope, has a much wider sphere in which both the sides of that we deal in political science, that is the theoretical side as well as the applied side, and also the certain extra legal institutions are covered in it. So whether sometimes whether you use politics or political science, it is up to you, it is up to the scholars who write, but the most preferred term is of political science. When you use it as a wider term, when you are not concerning yourself only with the state and government and its functioning, when you are concerning political science as being concerned with also the political philosophy, and along with it political institutions covering not only legal institutions but also extra legal institutions, then obviously you use the term political science. So with this we end with the meaning and definition of political science. Thank you.